Hi, marriage plot students. I'm going to talk with you a little bit today about the elements of Gothic romance in the novel Jane Eyre. I've talked with you a little bit about the history of Romanticism and British Romanticism. It goes back to the poetry of Wordsworth and Coleridge, published in the 1790s in their first book of poetry that they published together entitled Lyrical Ballads. And there are certain key themes that are featured in romantic literature that we see in the novel Jane Eyre. We see them initially in the first 10 chapters with the presentation of Gateshead and the Red Room when Jane gets locked in and thinks that she sees ghosts. We also see it in Jane's affinity with nature and how she escapes the pestilence at her school at Lowood by going out and spending time in nature, and she almost becomes like a natural spirit, one with her surroundings. And she feels comforted by a feminine, natural spirit. So in these next chapters, in chapters 11 through 22, you're going to see a further development of the Gothic romantic style in this novel. The first thing I would point to is the character of Mr. Rochester, who is a classic Byronic hero. He's brooding, he's not traditionally handsome, he's dark, sarcastic, and he seems to have some sort of secret sorrow that drives him away from Thornfield Hall. Also, Gothic fiction features transgressions, features rebellions against tradition. And Charlotte Bronte is very clever and creative in the way that she incorporates sort of rebellions against what would be acceptable for young women. Jane is able to talk freely with Mr. Rochester in a way that is very unusual. Their conversations are flirtatious, sarcastic, witty. I think that they take the witty repartee that we saw in Pride and Prejudice to another level. And definitely, Mr. Rochester talks with Jane about some things that would not be appropriate for a young woman to talk about. He talks about lovers, he talks about traveling around and behaving in ways that wouldn't be appropriate for a Christian gentleman. And then also, we have a moment, which you'll read about, I don't want to give everything away, where Jane and Rochester are alone together in his bedroom. Sort of the plot brings them together in a way that enables Jane to be moral even as she's alone with a man in a bedroom, and it's a spicy moment, and definitely one that rebels against social moral standards. In Gothic literature, you see an obsession with the darker side of human life and with the supernatural. Gothic fiction incorporates ghosts, vampires, witches, and spirits. Also, the recurrent violation of taboos that you see in Gothic literature is meant to evoke a thrill, some horror, some terror in readers. And one of the fundamental functions of these sort of violations of taboos and the incorporation of the supernatural is to create a sense of sort of a destabilization of the norms of society. So incorporation of ghosts and vampires and witches can be a way to talk back to social norms and destabilize the fabric of society. We see a contrast between the sacred and the profane in these chapters. Consider the character of Jane herself. She's often described as pale, small, Quakerish. She contrasts with Rochester as sort of his moral center or compass. Also, the pure versus the impure. The nighttime conversations and visitations between Jane and Rochester enable Jane to experience sexualized moments without risking her virtue. So we don't need to worry about Jane being immoral. And then, of course, you have this fear and fascination going on. The house itself is one that seems dark and mysterious. It seems, like I said, to drive Rochester away. It's full of attics and sort of dark, winding staircases that lead to places that we don't know about. And then, of course, the house party itself and the varied reactions to the gypsy that you're going to see in these readings, and Jane's reaction to Rochester and his house. So, Gothic romance is meant to make the reader feel dreadful pleasure, and I hope that you're feeling some dreadful pleasure as you read these next chapters.